told you that, like, the entire modern world, I mean, everything from artificial intelligence and space surveillance to fiat currency, was basically engineered in just one single 365-day window?
It is a wild concept to wrap your head around, honestly.
Right. Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking you on a journey into this highly unusual, just completely fascinating document. It's the introduction to a book titled Shocking Evidence of Time Manipulation.
Yeah, and the whole premise revolves around this one seemingly random year that the author argues is, well, the secret hinge of modern history. And that year is 1972.
Which is such a bold claim because, we are so used to thinking of history as this slow, gradual erosion.
Oh, absolutely. But the author points out that 1972 is actually referred to in certain circles as the longest year in modern recorded timekeeping.
The longest year. That's just, what does that even mean in practice?
Well, they don't mean it just felt long. They argue that the sheer density of paradigm-shifting events crammed into those 12 months completely defies the normal laws of historical progression.
Which brings us to how this whole obsession actually started, because this wasn't compiled by some stuffy academic sitting in a library for 30 years,
No, not at all. The author's investigation was actually sparked back in 2017.
Right, after they experienced what they just described as a world-changing event.
Exactly. And the text doesn't really labor on the personal details of what that 2017 event was, but it was the catalyst. It triggered this profound shift in their perspective.
It led them to just casually look into 1972 out of sheer curiosity, right? Like a personal hobby.
Yeah, just a hobby. And they found 12 interesting historical moments at first. Then that grew to 21.
And then 72.
Right, until it eventually exploded into this meticulously documented list of 172 history-altering moments.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when I first read that, going from a casual Google search to 172 world-changing events, my brain immediately just screamed, frequency illusion.
Oh, sure. The Bader-Meinhof phenomenon.
Yes. It's like when you buy a bright red car, and suddenly you think half the city bought one too.
Just because your brain is primed to notice them everywhere?
Exactly. I initially thought the author just got obsessed with 1972 and started, seeing it in the static.
Which is a totally natural psychological bias.
Yeah.
I mean, if you stare at literally any year long enough, you're going to find a lot of data.
Right, but then you actually look at the concrete, objective weight of the events they compiled. You basically have to throw that red car analogy right out the window.
Because the sheer scale is staggering.
It really is. We aren't talking about minor trivia. We are talking about Bill Gates starting his very first company.
Yeah.
We're talking about Tower 1 of the Twin Towers being completed, which fundamentally shifted the New York skyline and really the symbol of global economics.
And it permeates culture, too. You have the 1972 Miami Dolphins having their historic, completely undefeated season.
Right, and I'm glad you brought up the Dolphins. Because a skeptic listening might ask, well, why does a football team's winning streak belong on a list with global geopolitical shifts?
It's a fair question. But the author's point is that this anomaly permeated every single domain. It wasn't just science or just politics.
It was everything.
Exactly. It was a year where human extremes and perfection were manifesting simultaneously across the board.
And speaking of politics, the foundational shifts in justice and equality that year are just, they're staggering.
Oh, absolutely.
We had Charles Manson's death sentence altered to life in prison, which was a massive pivot for the American justice system.
And Shirley Chisholm became the first black woman to run for a major party presidential nomination.
Which entirely changed the mechanics of who could realistically seek the highest office.
Not to mention, you had Native American and Australian indigenous movements gaining this unprecedented, undeniable momentum globally.
Yes. And let's pause on Title IX for a second. We often just summarize it as, the law that helped women's sports.
Right, which it did.
It did, but mechanically it fundamentally rewired educational funding and institutional equality across the entire country.
It changed the financial architecture of American schools basically overnight.
It genuinely feels like society across the globe woke up in 1972 and collectively just decided to tear up the old rule book.
It does. But, what's fascinating here is how they organize it. because reading about all of this could so easily become just a blur of data.
Oh, for sure. Dropping 172 massive shifts on a reader is overwhelming.
Right, so what's brilliant about the author's approach is how they architected the book to prevent that exact fatigue. They designed this highly specific three-part reading structure.
It reads almost like a three-act play.
Precisely. For every single event on the list, they break it down into what happened, what led up to it, and what changed after 1972.
So if you, as the reader, just want the 30-second takeaway, you only have to read the first paragraph.
Right. But if you want to understand the deep causal mechanics, you follow the three acts. Treating history like a narrative arc allows you to process this extreme density of information at your own pace.
Which is so helpful. So, okay, we have this massive cultural reset. And naturally, when you reset culture, you create a vacuum.
You do.
Which brings us to the next massive theme in the document. 1972, acting as this brutal closing of doors on the old world, while simultaneously serving as the quiet, almost invisible birth of the modern technological era.
It was an incredible passing of the guard, really. On the ending side of things, the author points to monumental environmental and military conclusions.
Like the clean water laws.
Yeah, the passage of clean water laws, major nuclear treaties being signed. But perhaps most significantly, the world saw the definitive end of biological warfare programs.
Wow.
Right alongside the banning of the pesticide DDT.
Which is huge. We are talking about humanity consciously stepping back from technologies that were literally poisoning the planet and weaponizing disease.
Exactly. These are massive conclusions to previous eras of really destructive human behavior. And this closing of the old era is perfectly symbolized by the death of Harry S. Truman in 1972.
The author puts a lot of weight on Truman's death. Why is that specific passing so symbolic for them?
Well, because Truman wasn't just a former president. He was the primary architect of the post-World War II world.
Right.
He was the president connected to the dropping of the atomic bomb. He created the CIA. He established NATO.
Basically the entire Cold War security state.
Exactly. Even the early UFO era was birthed under his administration. So his death in '72 wasn't just the passing of a man. It effectively closed the chapter on that specific foundational period of global tension.
The old guard was literally leaving the stage.
Literally.
But right as they exit, the future is quietly entering. I mean, literally being born. The author points out that the current CEO of Google was born in 1972.
And former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett was born then.
Yes. And they even connect Luis Elizondo, who, is now a massive central figure in the modern UAP and UFO disclosure conversation, to this exact pattern.
It's all connected in this window.
But I think the detail that completely broke my brain was the AI robot.
Ah, yes. Shakey.
Shakey. I mean, we think of artificial intelligence as this ultra-modern 21st century anxiety, right?
We do.
But the author notes that Shakey, the very first mobile AI robot, actually retired in 1972.
Right. It was developed in the late 60s at the Stanford Research Institute, and by 1972, its project life was over.
An AI robot was finishing its career before the average American even owned a color television. That completely recontextualizes how I view the early 70s.
It is a total paradigm shift.
But look, I have to play the skeptic here on behalf of everyone listening.
So for it.
Because I'm looking at this list and I'm thinking about how busy human history is. If I pick 1999 or 1945 or 2001 and I look hard enough, can't I find a massive list of paradigm-shifting events in literally any year?
This raises an important question, and it's the exact critical friction the author expects from you.
Okay, so how do they defend it? What makes 1972 mathematically or historically distinct?
Think of history like a massive game of Jenga. In most years, you pull one or two blocks out. Society wobbles, maybe a new law passes or a leader dies, but the tower stands.
Right.
The author's argument is that in 1972, someone basically grabbed the table itself and shook it, shifting all the foundational blocks simultaneously.
Wow.
It's not just that things happened. It's the unprecedented convergence of these events across completely unrelated domains.
So it's the density.
Yes, the density.
Yeah.
And to prove it wasn't just a trick of the light, the author applied brutal inclusion criteria.
They didn't just list every famous person who was born or died.
No, not at all. They only included events that carried a lasting, undeniable ripple effect that dictated the trajectory of the decades that followed.
Which circles us back to the title of the book, right? Shocking evidence of time manipulation? Because up to this point in the document, they haven't explicitly said, like, aliens came down and rewound a clock. So how does the author actually justify that title? What is the manipulation here?
Well, based on the text, The author's thesis isn't necessarily some sci-fi trope of a time machine.
Okay.
The manipulation refers to the mathematical and structural anomaly of the timeline itself.
Meaning what, exactly?
The author believes the sheer impossibility of this much history happening in just 365 days suggests that time in 1972 was stretched, distorted, or maybe subjected to intense synchronicity by some unknown metric.
Like a decade's worth of human evolution forcefully compressed into a single calendar year.
Exactly. And the author believes they found a mathematical fingerprint proving this anomaly, which is the recurring echoes of the number 72.
Here's what gets really interesting, because the author doesn't just want you to read these facts in a sterile room like a textbook.
No, they don't.
To actually perceive this time manipulation, they recommend a completely multi-sensory approach. They want you to consume this history alongside the entertainment, the music, and the pop culture of 1972.
Because pop culture isn't just background noise. The author argues that the media of 1972 acted as a real-time mirror, reflecting these massive, often invisible historical shifts.
Right.
If you really want to understand the feeling of this compressed timeline, you basically have to listen to its soundtrack.
And the synchronicity they uncover is genuinely eerie. I mean, let's look at the music. You have Elton John releasing his iconic smash hit Rocket Man in 1972.
Classic track.
On its own, it's just a great pop song. But what else happens that exact same year? Werner von Braun, the actual literal Rocket Man who architected the Apollo space program, leaves NASA for good.
The fictional Rocket Man ascends in the culture exactly as the physical Rocket Man steps down.
It's crazy. And then you have Jim Croce. He debuts Time in a Bottle in 1972.
Such a beautiful, melancholic song.
It really is all about wanting to freeze time to save the people you love. And concurrently, in the real world, Alcor, the organization that becomes the global leader in cryonics, they begin the process of preserving human beings in cylinders.
They're literally, scientifically trying to put time in a bottle.
It's history rhyming in real time.
It is, and the author draws an even more profound line between the global economy and the music of the era, specifically focusing on Pink Floyd.
Oh, this one is wild.
Right. Now, Pink Floyd's legendary album, The Dark Side of the Moon, officially came out in 1973.
Right.
But much of that material was actually written and performed live during their 1972 tour. And the author points specifically to the track Money, which Pink Floyd debuted live on January 20, 1972, at the Brighton Dome in England.
And the timing of that live debut is just flawless, because 1972 was the exact year the Dow Jones Industrial Average hit 1,000 points for the very first time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's deeper than just the stock market doing well. This was the exact window when the modern fiat currency world took its definitive shape.
Which is a huge deal.
For listeners who might not obsess over economics, this was the era where global money was fully decoupled from physical gold. Money became this abstract concept built on trust and government decree.
So right as the literal definition of global wealth becomes this abstract floating concept, Pink Floyd is on stage playing a bass-heavy anthem about the corrupting cyclical nature of money.
It's literally the soundtrack of the new economic reality.
And the musical connections aren't just limited to songs released in that year either.
No, they aren't.
The author finds these bizarre echoes in music that came much later, pointing directly back to the geopolitical shifts of 72. Like, take U2's famous track, Sunday Bloody Sunday.
Sure.
The song is explicitly written about the tragic violence that took place in Northern Ireland in 1972. But the author hones in on a completely different detail, which is the band's name.
U2, which is phonetically identical to the U2 spy plane.
Right. And mechanically, why does that matter? Because 1972 was the exact year the Corona satellite program ended. The entire era of risky, pilot-flown aerial reconnaissance, the era of the U-2 spy plane, was officially giving way to permanent, unblinking spy satellites in orbit.
It completely changed the architecture of global surveillance.
Entirely. So you have a song about the human toll of 1972, played by a band whose name echoes a relic spy plane, right as the physical spy plane era is sunsetted for space surveillance.
The layers there are incredible, and the author extends this synchronicity into film and television, too.
Oh, yeah.
They highlight how visual media captured the visceral human extremes of that year. Take the movie Alive.
Such an intense film.
It depicts the true story of the 1972 Andes flight disaster, where a rugby team survived a plane crash deep in the mountains.
Right.
They were forced to resort to cannibalism to survive the elements, and they remained stranded for exactly 72 days.
72 days. There is that mathematical fingerprint again. The author started with 72 events on their list. The year is 72. They are stranded for 72 days.
And the author is very clear that they aren't bringing up the cannibalism to be sensational.
No.
They use it because the reality of 1972 was undeniably shocking. It pulls you out of the sterile statistics and forces you to realize that this year was defined by intense, visceral extremes of the human condition.
And television provides one final fascinating loop back to this year. HBO launched in 1972 as the very first subscription television channel.
Revolutionizing how we consume media.
Completely. Decades later, HBO produces a premium series called The Plumbers. And what is that show about? It's a deep dive into the 1972 Watergate scandal.
The very network birthed in 1972 eventually circles back to chronicle the most defining political collapse of 1972.
I have to say, this completely validates the author's multi-sensory approach because by layering the music, the movies, and the television over the hard geopolitical facts, it stops feeling like a dry timeline.
It really does.
It makes you actually feel the density of the era.
Which naturally brings us to the mind of the author who compiled this and the highly specific lens through which they demand you view as information.
Right.
Because when you are curating a timeline that includes Watergate, the end of biological warfare, and Charles Manson, you are wading into incredibly charged, divisive territory.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people go to war over how those specific events are interpreted.
But the author goes out of their way to establish a philosophy of deliberate, absolute neutrality.
Okay.
They explicitly state in the text that they do not vote. They wrote this book with no intention of defending one political party over another.
Whoa.
Yeah, they refuse to take religious, nationalist, class, gender, racial, or political stances.
They actually ask the reader to think of them as an alien observer, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like someone from another world who has just spent years quietly studying Earth from orbit.
They explicitly ask you not to focus on them as a person, but to keep your eyes entirely on the phenomenon of 1972.
But wait, I have to push back on that because how on earth can someone compile a list detailing the Manson family murders, the horrors of the Andes plane crash, and the terrifying realities of biological warfare and still claim to be this innocent, neutral observer?
It seems impossible.
Doesn't looking at all that darkness make you inherently cynical?
That is the striking juxtaposition at the heart of this document. Despite staring directly into the darkest elements of human history, the author maintains a profoundly empathetic, almost unconditionally loving view of humanity.
That's fascinating.
In the acknowledgments, they express this deep gratitude to the people who took their theories seriously. They faced immense scrutiny, but they admit that simply being heard by a few open-minded people was the spark that kept the project alive.
They didn't even intend to write a book initially, right?
No, not at all.
It was just people constantly asking, like, hey, how's that 1972 project coming, that finally pushed them to publish it?
Exactly. And you can see that genuine care for humanity in their actions outside the text, too. The document notes that a portion of the book's proceeds goes directly to providing wheelchairs, highlighting a specific philanthropic dedication to people with disabilities.
So, what does this all mean? If we step back and look at the whole picture, the 172 events, the time manipulation theory, the Pink Floyd synchronicities, the alien neutrality, what is the ultimate takeaway here?
What are they asking us to do with it?
Yeah, what is the author actually asking us to do with this information?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, they are asking us to radically change how we view the mechanics of history.
Okay.
The author states that they view every single person as arriving in this world innocent, just doing the best they can to absorb their environment with limited tools.
Right.
By adopting that neutral, empathetic lens, they are begging the reader to strip away their partisan anger, their nationalistic biases, and their preconceptions.
Just drop the baggage.
Exactly. Only when you drop the anger can you clearly see the hidden architecture of how a single year reshaped the globe.
It's a genuinely beautiful way to approach something as heavy as the history of human extremes.
Yeah.
And, well, it brings us to the end of our journey today.
It's been quite a ride.
We've gone from the undefeated 1972 Miami Dolphins and the quiet retirement of an AI robot named Shakey to the passing of the atomic age old guard and the dawn of a fiat currency world serenaded by Pink Floyd.
We've explored a deeply fascinating premise, that 1972 was not just an ordinary trip around the sun.
Not at all.
It was an anomaly an overlooked nexus of human extremes, and potentially the mathematical fingerprint of time manipulation.
It completely shatters the idea that time moves in a slow, predictable, straight line. 1972 wasn't a river, it was a waterfall.
It really was. And the text leaves you with a profound thought to mull over as you go about your day.
What's that?
Well, the author used the recurring echoes of the number 72 to unlock a hidden pattern in our past, proving that a single overlooked year acted as the secret hinge for the modern world.
Right.
So if time can compress that much paradigm-shifting history into one invisible window, what unrecognized, hidden in plain sight year are we living through right now that will entirely redefine the future?
Right.
And perhaps more importantly, what soundtrack is currently playing in the background while it happens?
That is an incredible question. Keep your eyes open and keep listening. Until next time, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Born in 1972, a star child from the Alcor stranger in strength,